Well, good morning and welcome today to the launch of a new series that we have brought on with, I guess, the events that are at hand being COVID-19. Very quick intro to Andy. So while I'm introducing you, Andy, please unmute so you're ready to rock and roll. So Andy Fox is one of 6 people in Australia qualified and certified to deliver the Resilience Advantage program. So we're lucky to have him here in Geelong. Companies in the US have reduced staff turnover, saving $2.5 million, decreased errors in hospitals by 3,600 events in 1 year, resulting in less claims, while increasing employee engagement and delivering a better quality of life for everyone. In this session, Andy is going to share how these companies did it and how you can model their success. If you want to build and store resilience, then use this extra capacity to transform your life and business, then make sure you see this presentation. Just one thing to note, Andy gets excited and starts to speak fast. So bring your fast listening ears to today's session. Welcome, Andy.
I know things are tight and everyone's really busy. God, what a time in our life. It's just crazy with COVID-19 and the effects that it's had on our businesses, on our lives, on our employees, our community, our friends, family, and everything else. It's actually crazy. And seeing some of the things that we've seen on the news, it's just been mind-blowing, you know, like going to the supermarket and shelves being empty. And honestly, almond milk, how many containers do you need for a week? And so what is actually driving this behavior? And that's what I want to cover today. I want to share some things that are instantly actionable for you. I also want to give you a technique that'll simply change your life. I'll show you how to shift your emotional or your nervous system from being in a state of stress and can't think straight and can't work and can't act. Within 30 seconds to 3 minutes, you'll have yourself reset and back into a really good, smart thinking way. I also want to explore a bit of the physiology of resilience as well, which is it's a super fascinating thing that we never really think about. We talk about resilience, what is it? And it means a lot of things to different people, so we'll give it a definition. Number 2 is we're going to have a little look inside what happens in our body. And so when we see it in our employees and we see it in ourselves, we'll go, hang on a minute, I've been triggered. And then you can use the tool that I'm going to give you towards the end of the presentation to actually reset yourself. I'm also going to drop a few little examples on how you might want to use that for yourself and also for your business. And this is the main thing, I think, you know, in these times, in particular as leaders or people who are managing people, managing situations, building strategies, you know, trying to run our businesses and get our day-to-day life when, you know, cognitively in our brains, we just can't think straight, and we're trying to make quick decisions, and maybe we need to slow down. And I saw a great guy the other day. He's a Navy SEAL, and he's actually talking about that sometimes the best action to take is nothing. So sit, assess, and understand, but that sometimes doesn't help us with our stress. So let's jump into it. These are some of the companies that are using the Resilience Advantage program, and as Marie said, it's a globally accepted program. It's actually been used by some of these major corporates, also being used by hundreds of thousands of people across the world. And there's actually technologies in terms of apps, and for the HR people, there's ways of tracking and measure people. So it's a pretty good program. It's got over 100 peer-reviewed journals written about it, which has been quite massive. Guys like Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza have all used it in their seminars, and they use that for managing people, shifting their states, helping them become more mindful, or become better people, less stressed. So without further ado, let's jump straight in. Feel free to jump in any questions if you like. If you've got anything that you need to work through, then you can have a chat with Marie or myself about it after the presentation. So let's have a little look at resilience. So in terms of the way that we look at it, it's the capacity to prepare for, recover from, and adapt in the face of stress, challenge, or adversity. And there's a couple of things I'd like to flesh out there just in that descriptor, which make it a whole lot more acceptable for us. So it's capacity. It's something that we can build. It's like our muscles. It's like our brain power. It's something that we can actually build. So it's like, if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, there's a metaphor we use. It's called the inner battery. So we're building up a battery, a surplus of power, so that when we get inflicted by some negative, uncontrolled environment like stress or challenge or adversity, we can absorb that. So it's like a shock absorber in the car. And the program that I'm going to introduce you to, or one part of the program today, is going to introduce you to how that works and how you can actually use it for you and also in your business. So I'll try and settle down now. I'm starting to get excited. So these are the domains of resilience. And if we think about it in this way, there's several different domains of resilience. So if you think about it, we go to the gym, or not at the moment because we're not allowed to, but when we can go back to the gym. So we build physical power, so that's endurance and strength. And in terms of our mental flexibility, we read books, we improve our attention span, we do meditation, potentially mindfulness techniques, potentially, and a whole range of other things that build up our mental function. And then on our spiritual side, you may be religious, or you might be a spiritual type of person, and either of those are great. But the way that we look at it is how you relate to yourself and how you relate to your others in terms of your values or your tolerance and those sort of aspects. So it's more about community and fit and working together with people and working with yourself. But the thing that we don't really spend any time with is our emotions. And 80% of our body drain energy-wise is through our emotions. So shifting emotions, what you may or may not know, every time you shift an emotion, there's a cascade of 1,400 neurochemicals, no, I'm not going to name them, that will get flushed into your system. So you've got sort of things like cortisol and adrenaline, and they're what's happening at the moment. And the effects on the body are amazing. I'm going to actually show you some physical examples of how that can physically affect people and how it turns their brain off. So let's just move on. Let's work on the emotional domain of resilience for today. So this is an actual physical case. This is a story of a guy and his wife. The guy actually went to the Heart Math Institute in the States, where the program has been developed since 1991. And they put a Holter monitor on his actual chest. And this is super interesting. What they were going to measure was heart rate variability. There are variability between the beats of his heart, which give an indication of physical fitness and coherence, and also his heart rate over a period of time. So they put the the Holter monitor on, the heart rate monitor on, and then he started driving home with his wife, and they're both in the car, and you can see the initial part of the discussion seemed to be quite good. So I'm just going to draw some arrows here for you. So you can see just down here, he's actually quite chirping along. You can see here his heart rate's kind of 65, 70, which is perfect. 72 is pretty normal. And then they start to actually have a bit of a heated discussion. The wife said something to the husband that actually triggered him, which, you know, at work, this might be the boss saying something to a worker saying something to the worker, a client saying something to the worker. It might be a client calling in and saying, you know, where's my whatever, you know, come on, you guys got to be doing this. So ultimately, we know we've been triggered. The interesting thing is you can see that his heart rate goes crazy. So he's actually going crazy right up to here. So you can see here, he's up to like 130, 140 beats per minute. But look at the time that the guy is up there. So it's sort of almost 20 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes that the guy's heart rate is elevated, which is crazy. So he just had an argument. So what's happened inside his body is that there's been a rush of adrenaline and cortisol. And I'll show you the effects of these in your system, and many other neurochemicals that actually inspire it. But what really grabs me is that if you actually think about it, I'll just move my arrow across. So what you actually see here is that for almost 40 minutes afterwards, 20 to 40 minutes, this guy's heart rate didn't get below, and even in the whole hour that this was recorded, his heart rate never returned to normal. So what this means is that there's a constant push of cortisol and adrenaline going into his body. It's absolutely flat out all the time. So what we're seeing is that the actual effect on his body is cumulative stress. Now, what does that do? Let's have a little look-see at the next one. I'll just get a zip across the slide. We go to the next one. It's cool. So this is exactly what's happening. You've got two sides of your nervous system. So when you're in a triggered situation, you've got your autonomic nervous system that kicks in. You've heard of fight or flight, and this is exactly what's happening with panic buying. There's the fear of missing out. It's the fear, the anger, the guilt, shame, all of those things that are coming in, those emotions that have been triggered, and that triggers your sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system in your car would be the throttle pedal, the gas pedal, and then the parasympathetic would be your brake pedal. So what happens is dilate your eyes, it stops secretion of saliva, dilates your bronchioles, your heart rate increases, your breathing gets shallower, secretes adrenaline and cortisol, your stomach doesn't digest anymore, so that means, you know, unwellness in a long term, your bowel movements don't work. And in terms of, most importantly, your cortical function, or your thinking ability in your brain, is actually reduced by 60%. So if you're challenged in terms of your IQ to begin with, if you take 60% away from not a lot, then you've got not a lot. If you're actually really clever, then you've got a little bit left. But most of us actually can't think straight. So stress equals can't think straight. And being able to shift it in a short period of time is what I'm going to show you to do a little bit later on. So what we want to try and do is get people to understand, number one, okay, I've been triggered. I'm in a stress situation. I can feel the adrenaline coming through me. I can actually feel my brain starting to shut down. I can feel myself starting to shake. I can feel all these things happening. I can feel tight in my stomach, tight in my shoulders. I'm not functioning correctly. So I need to then go to my parasympathetic nervous system. So I need to be able to reverse the effects of what's happening biochemically, neurochemically, and also in my nervous system. So that means that the breathing slows down, the cognitive function comes back, and all of those other things that we talked about are reversed. So here's another example of someone who does know the technique, and they're actually a police officer and they're a first responder, and you could imagine what their life is like. It's kind of similar to ours, but they've got a whole bunch of other challenges going on in terms of, being a first responder and people going out to the marketplace and that sort of stuff. So this was a simulation, and he also was wearing a Holter monitor to actually get the heart rate. Some of the interesting takeaways here are you can see his heart rate stays pretty normal. And then you can see the first red line, he actually encounters the angry man, and you can see the scenario playing out. You can see the heart rate going up. And remember the other guy, his heart rate kept going up and it stayed up and it didn't come down. So after the scenario, the police officer has gone into reset mode, which is the similar sort of technique as I'll show you later today. And his autonomic nervous system has kicked in. So over here on the tail end, you can see he's reset, and then you can see the officer shift at the end. Now, what I'm thinking in terms of businesses, for example, like manufacturing, if people are stressed, they're making errors, that costs money. If people aren't communicating because they're stressed, they're not hearing what the other person said, then that costs money, costs time. It could cost lives when there's industrial accidents. For like petrochemical, you have to be absolutely bang on with your measuring of your chemicals, your occupational health and safety, your mental wellness of your guys, because if there's a mistake, then wow, things could go pear-shaped, I would imagine, pretty quickly. The things like lawyers or transport drivers, if you've got a transport driver and he's in his head and he can't think straight, he's stressed, have I got a job, haven't I got a job, what's going to happen, what's life going to look like, I can't afford the house, the kids, we need the money, I can't find the shopping, we need to go shopping. It's like, well, why did you crash the truck again? Oh, yes. So we need to be able to then take our staff and say to them, not only ourselves, but our staff, and say, okay, cool, let's use this technique and let's shift our sympathetic nervous system reaction to trigger to stress response, and shift that into our parasympathetic nervous system so we can think smarter, be smarter. So what we do is build systems and procedures around this. So for example, you might have, someone going out on a call. So for example, like Barwon Water, you might be able to go out into the workplace. So then people are saying, well, why did it take so long to be here? And what have you been doing? And what's happening here? And all of those sort of things. And then if your guy can do these techniques, then he can actually just calm himself and not get triggered, and then you don't get a fight between customers. So there's lots of different applications, and it depends on what your specific issues are. We can certainly tailor make the system to work for you. So let's take what we know so far and pop it inside your business. Is stress bad? No, it's not. Actually, a little bit of stress is called a challenge, and we all know through research that a little bit of challenge is good. And challenge excites us. It gets that cortisol running, which is, cortisol's not bad, adrenaline's not bad. A little bit is good, but living from that place, that's toxic for your body. So getting people inspired, getting people a bit wound up, getting people, not like me, but like that all the time. But in terms of getting people a bit challenged, it actually gives them better performance in their work. The second part of that is that then from that point, people get a period of maximum efficiency. So this is where people are getting along, there's flow in the workplace, everyone's getting along, things are getting done, no mistakes are being made. Well, we've got it, it's all good, we can take our foot off the gas pedal, this is excellent. Then what happens is over a period of time, if you sustain the same level of effort and the same level of stress, we find it being negative. This is the hyperreactive stage. This is where people start reacting and responding and starting to bite and niggle and start to complain and might see errors in their work coming in. You might see silly things that, 3 weeks ago they were really good and now they're starting to, do we really want to keep them? And you know, you might have been dumped with a bunch of work. You know, okay, well, cool. You've got to do all these online courses and they need to be done by tomorrow. And yes, that'll take you 100 hours. Good luck. We'll see you tomorrow. So how do you deal with that load? And what I'll show you in a couple of minutes is a technique to be able to help that. The ultimate fourth stage of this is where people actually go past the hyperreactive stage and they go into emotional exhaustion. And we've all seen these people. They can't think straight. They can't even, you say something simple to them and they just don't get it. And this is because they become cognitively challenged. They're not bad people. They're really good people and they're really fantastic employees, but we just haven't managed them all that well. And we can give them these tools so that they can reset themselves and we can reset ourselves and we can reset each other. And what that happens is then we actually regenerate. We get more capacity. So the statistical information that's come out of the Heart Math Institute in the States is this. So people who use the technique that I'll show you in a couple of minutes is the blue line, and a normal person's performance is the red line. And what you can see is that, yes, they do take greater challenges. They have a greater period of maximum efficiency. The hyperreactive stage tails off less, and the emotional exhaustion stage is not as bad. The difference of performance mathematically is 56%. Which is significant. If someone said to me, Andy, you can get 56% more performance out of yourself, how do you feel about that? I'd say, show me, let's do it. You know, and in terms of how that translates to profitability, in terms of lack of staff turnover, staff engagement, and people getting excited about coming into work and then being able to listen and understand empathically what they're doing, building that resilience, building that inner battery and charging themselves up, the workplace instantly transforms itself. So I hope you're sort of following me along. So what we're trying to chase here is energy balance. So constant energy expenditures without the balance of adequate rest, recovery, lead to burnout, errors, health challenges, and diminished performance. And we know why that is, because it's all about the shift in emotions and lack of emotional resilience. That's that building of that inner battery. So, okay, how do we do this? Let's do a little bit of a takeaway here. So what I'd like to do is, if that's okay with you, I can see some smiling faces, people saying, yeah, this is a bit interesting. All right. So what we'd like to do is just run through the exercise with you, if that's okay. So the first part of it is self-awareness. So what I'd like you to do right now is just to check in with yourself. Just check in. How am I feeling? You know, physiologically in your shoulders and your arms and your back and, you know, in your mind. Hey, are you feeling stressed? Are you feeling a little bit tired? Are you feeling a bit, you know, sort of irritable? Are you feeling great? You're feeling excited, empowered, excited? How are you feeling? So let's just take a couple of secs just to sort of feel into ourselves. Okay, cool. So I'm assuming that there's a lot of people sort of in different spectrums. So some people don't feel too bad. Some people feel quite excited. Some people are kind of like, yeah, I'm really tired and can we just keep going, please? Or that sort of stuff. So that's self-awareness. That's checking in with yourself. And the thing is, we check in as business people with the finances. We check in with the staff, we check in with the operations team, the HR team, we check in with what's happening, we look at cash flows, we look at budgets, we look at all sorts of different things during the day, but we very rarely check in with ourselves. So step number one is just check in with yourself. Just from time to time go, hey, how am I feeling? How am I doing? How's this going? So the next step is, and we can all do this together, there's 2 steps here. So I'll run through the steps and then we'll run through the technique together. So this is how we're going to shift our physiology from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system. And we'll note, well, we know how we feel now, and then after the exercise, we'll feel that shift in ourselves. So step 1 is heart-focused breathing. So we focus our attention in the area of the heart. We imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart and chest. And breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. And so what we're going to do is just bring our attention to our heart. And now, if you can't sort of imagine where your heart is, or you can't sort of connect with it, I sometimes just use my hand. I just put it on my heart. And then that physical touch actually allows me to connect. And then what we'll do is we'll breathe in and out 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. Now, a little trick that you may or may not know is that the in-breath activates the sympathetic nervous system, speeds you up, gas pedal, and the out-breath actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the slow down, the brake pedal. And so if you look at a lot of the meditations that you do, the in-breath is way shorter than the out-breath, so usually 5 seconds in, 7 seconds out. For the purpose of this exercise, what we're going to do is have 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. So also the second part of that is once we get going, we're going to make a sincere attempt to experience a regenerative feeling. So that is something like appreciation or love or gratitude or care or happiness or joy or excitement, invigoration, empowerment, you know, whatever makes you feel good, excites you and gets you a bit excited, then that's the sort of emotion that we want to do. So let's, we can do this with our eyes open and or we can do it with our eyes shut. So which is ever up to you. I'm just going to do mine with mine shut and you're quite welcome to do yours with eyes open or shut. It works either way. So let's just start focusing our attention in the area of our heart. If you want, put your hand up. And let's start breathing in and out. 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. Breathe in 5 seconds. And out 5 seconds. And if you feel your thoughts coming in, just allow them to go through and just get back to your breathing. Just come back gently. That's fine. So in 5 seconds and out 5 seconds. Now let's get a regenerative emotion, something like joy or happiness or feel a connection. Maybe think of the dog or, you know, wife, husband, kids, friends, family, community, groups, something that makes you feel nice and good. And we'll let that feeling grow in our heart as we breathe in and out. Okay, that should be fine. Just gently come out when you feel like it, when you're fresh. So if we had a chat room going, I could ask you how you're feeling, but my guess is that you're feeling a little bit refreshed and you can feel like a little bit of clarity in your mind. You can feel a little bit more relaxed and a bit of that tension sort of missing. If people are sort of in that spectrum, then what we'll find is that if you're really, really busy and you're super, super intense, then it would take, you know, maybe 3 minutes or 5 minutes or sometimes 10 minutes to actually, you know, really settle in. So we've done, 30, 45 seconds. So we're getting a little shift in that time. So that's called the quick coherence technique, which is one of the fundamentals of many of the techniques that is within the Resilience Advantage program. It's something that even just the heart-focused breathing, you can actually give to your team. And I've got my team here. We have a guy called Josh who had some challenges when he first started working with us with irritable bowel syndrome, and it was a consequence of stress. A bit of heart-focused breathing, and we put him through the process, and now he has no days off with IBS, and he's totally engaged. He's dealing with stress really, really well. So he understands his trigger point through self-awareness. He's able to communicate that, and it's had a massive effect on his body. Some of the hospitals that are using it, they're actually embedding it in the system. So, for example, if you're in a first responder situation, like the hospitals and things like that, they actually have a room that people go to that they actually do this. So they reset and they go back out, they get less errors. So what's actually happening is a synchronization between the heart and the mind, and this is called coherence. And so on the left-hand side, we can see incoherence, which is how we were feeling before, and that's that first guy. And then coherence is the second guy who's been able to shift the actual movement from his sympathetic, the police officer, from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's how that works. And so this system can actually be embedded into your systems and procedures as we go through. For HR people, there's a program called the M-Wave Pro. We can plug people into the system and we can actually map and see where their levels of coherence are. There's different levels of skill levels. So there's 4 levels that you can challenge yourself. And if you want to do it at home and you want to measure and track it yourself, there's an app available as well. So you can plug that in. There's a Bluetooth sensor. It's for Android and also iOS. So that's pretty cool. So you can actually track and measure. It's pretty amazing. So it's very actionable. So I think we might leave it there. We've had a bit of a shift. I know we're sort of pushing for time and I don't want to take up your whole day. So if there's certainly any questions on the Resilience Advantage program, you'd like to explore it more, or you'd like something tailor-made to yourself, there's an 8-part series which we're going to be delivering where we can deep dive into different aspects and give you more tools and help you out much more. So all those details should go through to Marie.